Joining us now to talk all about American foreign policy and Trump's visits to Asia is Robert Manning, Distinguished Fellow at the Stimson Center think tank in the US. Thanks for speaking to France 24.
My pleasure.
So what have you got your eye on specifically when it comes to this visit that Donald Trump is making to Asia this week?
Well, obviously, the Cambodia-Thai effort is part of his quest for a Nobel Peace Prize, which he's been very ostentatious about. But I think the real centerpiece is a meeting with Xi Jinping, where they will, I think, try to at least shape the outlines of a deal with China, which I think will include, something on U.S. agricultural goods. 50% of American soy farmers' market is in China, and they've lost it entirely because of Trump tariffs. So there's pressure there. I think from the Chinese perspective, they're tired of this crazy uncertainty, and they're looking for stability and predictability. So I think you'll get some deal on technology, whether it's a commitment from them on rare earths and possibly a loosening of U.S. controls of chip exports, maybe some scaled down NVIDIA chips, AI chips. And the Chinese want some kind of reassurance on Taiwan. So those are some of the elements. If they don't finalize them there, there's going to be an exchange of summits next year with Xi coming to Washington and Trump going to Beijing. So I think Trump's hope is to kind of stabilize the relationship and assure, that China's rare earths could really shut down American tech industry entirely and auto industry. So there's a big concern about their elaborate new export controls, and the U.S. wants some commitment that the flow will not be impinged.
Now, Robert, you do sound fairly confident that there will be some sort of deal down the road, but we know how unpredictable the Trump administration can be. What would you say could be perhaps the worst case scenario?
Well, I think, what we saw, for example, Trump earlier this year essentially undid 25 years of diplomacy with India because of a phone call with Prime Minister Modi that he got angry at. And so he's capable of very impulsive behavior. If something happens with Xi that sets him off, the whole thing could blow up. And of course, Trump is the only dove in the U.S. government. Most of the rest of the government is focused on containing China, preparing for war with China. And Trump is the sole deal maker. So I think it could shift easily if things go sour.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the Venezuelans feel right now about Trump being described as a dove, however. I saw you tweeted earlier today that Xi Jinping must be laughing at the situation of this deployment to the Caribbean.
Well, it's very disturbing because they've traditionally blurred the line between crime and war. And that's really the core problem, right? Traditionally, these are small speedboats that couldn't possibly even make it to the United States. Several of them were headed for Trinidad, not the United States. And the problem is they've charged that these are drug peddlers, and that may be true, but they've failed to produce any evidence. They won't tell Congress what the evidence is. So it's that in essence, the U.S. is kind of acting like a rogue nation, almost like a pirate in the Caribbean. And I think that the larger agenda, they're very focused on the Western Hemisphere, and it's a kind of neo-Monroe doctrine. And I don't think they'd like to see regime change in Venezuela. I think that's quite clear. And that's what the larger agenda is. You don't need an aircraft carrier and a carrier task force to deal with drug peddlers in in smuggling in the Caribbean. So there's a larger agenda here, and the lack of accountability is most troubling. And I think this regime change in Latin America may not end at Venezuela if it does happen.
Yeah, there is a question though over to what extent this is Trumpism playing out, and to what extent it's simply maybe a more forceful or more brazen continuation of the kinds of actions that America has taken in the past in Latin America.
Well, it certainly is in this grand tradition of American imperialism in Latin America over several hundred years, last 100 years or so. Um, and I think a lot of Trump's base is very upset about this because they're focused on what happened to America first. You know, it's not just Venezuela. The $40 billion bailout for President Milei in Argentina. You know, at the same time, the government is shut down and people are losing food stamps and federal workers are not being paid. I think that there's a lot of discontent within Trump's MAGA base over this.
Yeah, finally, I just wanted to bring you back to a situation that's affecting us a lot here in Europe and the move we saw from Donald Trump this week to put sanctions on Russian oil. Obviously, he's in Asia this week. Is he hoping to stop India and China from buying Russian oil? And can he achieve this?
I don't. I'm dubious about China, but I think there's been a quiet effort at a trade deal that is almost complete with India, and the Indians, for example, Indian refineries have announced they're not going to refine any more Russian oil. So it may be that they're starting you can't turn that off overnight, but I think the Indians may be starting a phased process to reduce Russian oil imports. And the reason Trump could do this is there's a global oil glut. And so part of the agenda here is not just sanctions on Russia, but they see the Saudi Arabia recapturing some market share as a result of these sanctions.
All right, Robert Manning, we'll leave it there. Robert Manning from the Stimson Center in the US. Thank you very much for your time speaking to France 24.